You're listening to Press Plus One podcast. You can check out Canada's online destination for all things arts and entertainment at www.pressplus1.com. News broke in November that producer Avi Federgreen, famous for his films, Score, a hockey musical that launched the 2010 Toronto International Film Festival, 1 Week starring Joshua Jackson, which quickly became a Canadian classic, and Leslie, My Name is Evil, which was called a campy psychedelic romp by the New York Times, the upcoming features I'm Yours starring Rosie Sutherland and Moonpoint has done the unimaginable and created a new distribution company for Canadian films called IndieCan. This may not seem like news to your average viewing public, but you get the idea that this is a slightly epic announcement when words like game changer starts being bandied about. In truth, with this simple announcement that a new distribution company with the goal of getting Canadian films with a budget of $1 million or less to Canadian audiences, Federgreen is the harbinger of bringing talented independent filmmakers to the forefront. The sense of excitement, nervousness, and an unenviable amount of blood, sweat, and tears seems to be virtually hanging in the air for a couple of reasons. And yet, Canadian films with $1 million or less budget is an innovative trend where incredible films are being engineered by visionary first-time filmmakers. Potentially missed by bigger distribution giants, these are the types of films that made audiences rush to the theatres to see films like Britain's The Full Monty and the US's Little Miss Sunshine. Who knows, similar films may be hovering just under the surface in Canada, awaiting a distributor like IndieCan to invest a little interest, dedication, and love into the project. After all, Federgreen says he is doing this for love, and not the bottom line. Of course, this isn't a prefabricated response. Making films in Canada have to be done out of love and a lot of bravery. We suspect Federgreen has just enough of those elements invested in IndieCan to make him a visionary of Canadian indie films. We interviewed Avi Federgreen recently, extensively, to find out what his goals, objectives, and ideas of IndieCan are, and how he is going to bring a vibrant new collective of Canadian films to Canadian audiences. First of all, I want you to tell me about IndieCan. What gave you the idea? Where's your focus for that?
I've been in the film business for almost 20 years now, making my own films, and in the last few years making low budget films, like significantly low budget, like under $1 million. Mm-hmm. And it's really because there isn't a lot of distributors in Canada, and there's really four majors, Alliance, Mongrel, E1, that kind of thing. They can't take every piece of product that gets made in Canada, and they have an obligation to their investors and their companies to distribute X number of films, and ones that are bigger budget gives them greater chance of success as far as distribution channels are concerned. And that's all fine, and I respect that, but there's of let's say 200 to 250 films made in Canada every year, maybe 10% gets distribution and the rest don't. At least in English-speaking Canada. In Quebec, that's a different story altogether, and they have a system in place that works, and Quebecois people go and see Quebecois films, and they have a great following and a respect, and that's great. But English-speaking Canada, we're not even getting 5% box office, which was the typical telefilm idealistic percentage of audience to go see Canadian films. We're not getting anywhere near that. We might get 1 or 2%, maybe.
Now, you did 1 Week, which was enormous. I felt it was enormously going in the right direction, and had a really great success to it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Canadians aren't attending Canadian films?
It's hard to say. I mean, first of all, we're competing. Every week there's a big American movie coming out, and, if people are going to spend their money on something, they'll probably lend itself more to go towards see a big American film than they are a Canadian film. Everybody, we're talking economy, and people, are not spending as much money as they once did going out. They're mostly staying at home. They're mostly downloading movies on Netflix and watching on TMN or whatever. So fighting for a person's entertainment dollar when there's, like, especially in Toronto, there's the nightclub scene and concerts and movies and theater and ballet and everything. So if people have a decision to make, chances are they're going to go see an American film, which is why in my press release I said, going to Canadian films shouldn't be a one-time occurrence. It should be a regular occurrence. And how do you get people to go to see a Canadian film? Well, you make it a big deal to go and see a Canadian film. If that's what you have to do to get people to go and see your films, I would put our movies up against anybody's other films internationally. I mean, we're making great films here. We're doing, 1 Week, Barney's version, Score Hockey Musical, the list goes on, be it documentary feature films or narrative feature films. We make great films in this country. Edwin Boyd, which is coming out. There's lots of great films to go see, and we need, as Canadians, to encourage our public to go out and see our films. Just as much as, a Canadian musician puts out a CD, they're fighting against big, bands to get their music heard. It's, and novelists getting their books read and so on. We're all culturally in the same position where how do we convince Canadians to go and buy Canadian content? And I felt that there was a lack of that in the smaller budgeted films where they're not getting distribution. I mean, since this press release came out, I've been inundated with phone calls and requests to talk about this and comments on my Facebook page saying, my God, this is a long time coming. Thank you for doing this. I'm first a filmmaker, and beyond that, I think that this is really important to help filmmakers get their films seen. I've been in that position twice now where I've made a film that I couldn't get a distributor to take. And I was frustrated because I made a film, we've invested our time, our money to do this, and for what if people don't see it? I've always said, and on my production company website, I say, how do you know when you make a good film? When people go and see it and they go out to a coffee shop or a bar afterwards and talk about your film. That's to me what it's about, is creating conversation. And I think we have a lot to be proud of in this country. The films we're making, the music we're creating, the books that we're writing. Why not do something about getting people to go and participate in this?
So, okay, so then the obvious question becomes, is it possible to make money being a distributor of small...
No.
So you're doing this for love?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what is it that filmmakers, like, what are the requirements that would attract you to a film?
Well, obviously a film, there's no point of taking on a film if I can't get an audience for it. That's the first thing. Second thing is that I have to like it. I have to believe that, is this a film that's, I can get people to go see, number one, people two, then they're going to tell other people to go see it, and so on and so on and so on. And it's that conversation of having a conversation in a coffee house or whatever about that film. And that television wants it, and that people might want to download it off of Netflix or iTunes or go to Blockbuster and rent it. There's no point of investing my time and energy that is spread between this and my production company if I can't do the film justice, or if the film can't attract the audience that it needs to invest that time. Again, this is not a money-making venture for me. If I would be shocked. I mean, if I can break even, I'd be happy. This is not about a money-making thing. It's about if I didn't do this, nobody else. I didn't believe nobody else was going to do it. Somebody had to take this on. Somebody had to help push these films along. And some of these films are first-time filmmakers, and if nobody sees their film, then how can they convince an investor or a funder to get behind their next feature if they couldn't even get people to see the first one?
There are some amazing films coming out this year who are first-time filmmakers. You mentioned Edwin Boyd. I don't know if you saw The Odds.
No.
It was premiered at TIFF, and it's Simon Davidson is the director. And it was freaking awesome. Like, the audience were so engaged by the film afterwards for the Q&A and stuff. And I just thought, he did it for under $1 million. And I'm like, I want everybody I know to see that film. So it's like, how do you get that audience to connect with that film? It's like they'll not hear about it in the media. They'll not hear.
No, I don't even know about it, and you know, I'm sure there's a bunch of films that are out there that don't have a distributor that I would love to, if they're good, I would love to help them.
Yeah.
But you know, I made a movie last year. I was an exec producer on a film called Moonpoint, and we went to every funder in Canada to try to get funding. Everybody turned us down because it's so competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't hold anything against any of the funders for saying no. It's just you can only fund so many movies.
Right.
So, you know, we couldn't. We wanted to make the movie, and we did, and we made it for $75,000, and it got into 4 film festivals in Canada. It's gotten into Anchorage, Alaska, and we're hoping that it gets into a bunch of other film festivals. But I couldn't convince a distributor to take the film, so I said, okay, this is the icing on the cake. This is sort of like enough's enough. I've got to do this, and that was sort of the impetus to start the film distribution company. And from that, I have you know, since the press releases come out, I've been inundated with people that want me to take a look at their film, be it documentaries or feature films. And I've signed a documentary prior to the announcement of my company with a filmmaker out of Vancouver that I'm not prepared to announce yet, but he's a friend of mine. He's a talented director, and it's a very important film to get out there. So, you know, I want to do whatever I can. I want to help people as much as I can, and this is a necessity. And if I can make change, then I'm happy.
There's some real grassroots filmmakers going out there now saying exactly what you're saying, like not getting the funding. It's like, screw it. I'm going to beg, borrow, or steal and find the way to get my film made. And then you've got like an Insignificant Harvey, which just in theaters. The Guy Like the Odds. Vancouver, there's a lot of that going on right now, like you say, under that $1 million budget, and they're doing whatever they can. And then, like you say, then it just... what do you do with it then? You get it made, and then where do you go from there?
Yeah, and a lot of filmmakers are able to get a pre-license with with Super Channel or TMN and Movie Central. And TMN and Movie Central and Super Channel are very important to filmmakers because that gives them the ability to exhibition their films on television, and it helps part of the financing of the film. So when what I see and what's happening now is that most of the filmmakers that are coming to me have that portion in place, but they don't have free television covered, or they don't have Air Canada, they don't have hotels, or they don't have iTunes, or they don't have DVD. And in some cases, I might be able to help depending on the film. Like I said, you don't make money at theatrical, and you don't make money at DVD, and you don't make money at airlines and stuff like that. Where you make your money is television. If that's already pay television and television, if that's already gone, then I'm doing this because we need to expand the audience for that film. But my focus is Canada, which is, I want Canadian audiences to see Canadian films. That's the point. And if I can make a dent, even the slightest, then to me that's a big deal. Like I look at the Moonpoint, which we're going to be releasing in early 2012. That movie will be in more theaters in Canada than films like Defender or Poor Boy's Game got. There's something wrong with that. Why is it that a little $75,000 movie can go in more theaters than a movie with an Academy Award nominee like Woody Harrelson? There's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And we have to do whatever we can to support our own.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I can achieve that.
Something I've noticed. I worked a lot in the European market, and it is that perspective. It is that, it's our homegrown talent, and that's how they treat it over there. It's not I'm going to see an English film because I am British. It's I'm going to see it because I'll understand that cultural fabric. It'll be telling one of my stories, whatever that is.
Right.
And there's like that component missing here.
Right.
For now.
Yeah.
But it's something to build towards.
Well, I agree, and I think that, maybe foreign sales agents or distributors might take some of our films more seriously, the lower-end ones, if they actually see that our own country is supporting our own film, most of these small films don't see a life outside of its borders because they can't get anybody to see it here, which means how do they market it to an international marketplace that looks upon our film, some of these films, as, well, they can't even show it and get it distributed in Canada. Why would anybody in Germany or Denmark or whatever want to see it?
Right.
And I think that it's optics, right? It's if they see there's an interest burning or brewing, I should say, within our own country, then maybe there's a reason why they should take a serious look at this film and then want to be a participant internationally.
Right.
You know.
Speaking of international, I think this is maybe a new frontier that a lot of people are very frightened of, and I think it's somewhere where innovators will be heading, especially with film, is online. You mentioned about Netflix. Releasing films online and then packaging them up and selling them on DVD or anything like that. Is that in your sphere? Like online, is it something you're considering?
Well, I mean, listen, the landscape of exhibition is changing. Like, by July of next year, I was told that 90% of all screens in Canada will be digital, which means that film is dead. Yeah. Which makes me very sad because when I watch a film, I would rather see it projected in 35 or 70 mil as opposed to digital. You can see a difference in watching a film like Road to Perdition or whatever that's projected in 35 mil print, and you can see the grains and the image, and there's that it becomes part of that event that you're witnessing. There's so many of these low-budget films made for under $500,000 that nobody wants to distribute, and that's the point of IndieCan, and hopefully we can make change and get people to see it, and not only through unconventional marketing strategies. I think social media and internet drives more audience than spending $10,000 on a newspaper ad. I have no intention of doing conventional advertising like radio spots and TV ads and all that stuff. You're spending a lot of money for what? You have to find your audience for a low-budget Canadian film is through word of mouth, social media, creating a reason for them to go see the film. Yeah. Through Q&As, maybe contests, maybe making it an event. Part of the thing that we're looking at doing with Moon Point is we have an amazing soundtrack. Well, maybe we use that soundtrack as a vehicle to bring people in. Maybe one of the musical artists that we have a song of theirs on the soundtrack. Maybe they'll come and perform before the movie for a song or two. Right. I mean, make it when I was growing up in Edmonton, when when a big movie would come out, they would have like contests where, like, I remember I was assistant manager in a theater in Edmonton, and Conan the Barbarian, the first movie when it came out, we had a contest where come as dressed up as Conan or Red Sonja, and the best costume won a significant prize that we got the studio to give us a couple of posters or whatever, and we did that. We had people lined up in costume. I mean, how often do you see that in a movie theater anymore? Never. The reasons to come to. I mean, I remember my parents used to drop me off at a theater in Edmonton every Saturday. They had a double bill for 2 films for $5. It was kids' movies only, and like Godzilla vs. the Smog Mart, whatever. And it was an event, and your ticket stub had a number, and during the intermission they would call it a whole pile of numbers, so you could win free popcorn or popcorn. Like, all that's gone. Yeah. That doesn't exist anymore, and we need to bring that back. Yeah. Give people a reason to come to the theater. Yeah. Give reasons. How many families actually all go to the movies together anymore? Very rarely. I mean, my kids go to the movies by themselves. The parents go to the movies by themselves. Yeah. We need to bring families back to the theater together and make it economical for them to come to the theater. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things I'd love to see happen because I think it's important.
One of the things I'm seeing a lot of is the filmmakers going with the films across, which I think is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, that started probably 2007. The guys that did them all, David Miller and Richie Maida, who I love, they're really good friends of mine, they did that. And 1 week we did that. And a bunch of other films have been doing that, and I think it's important. Going Down the Road Again has done that. I think that you know, I think people enjoy meeting the filmmakers. I think people enjoy hearing what the filmmakers have to say about the making of the movie, the ability to ask a question. Again, creating more dialogue about the film, I think, is important. And it would be great if filmmakers, if there was a funding system to allow filmmakers to travel with their films across Canada. I would love to see a film series where maybe the filmmakers climb on a train from one end of Canada to the other, and go from city to city to city and talk about their films. We need to find any mechanism we can for us to talk about our films in Canada. And you know, we have a great film training center at the Film Center, and also various universities across this country that are teaching people how to make films. We're getting people every year graduating who are inspired and passionate about making films. The funding systems are not huge anymore for very economic reasons. So therefore filmmakers need to find new ways of making films, and a lot of them are doing that. But if you're going to go about making a film, then we need to find a way to get it out there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of pros and cons for the Canadian film industry right now. What would you say is a real plus that's working for this industry, and what would you say is a real setback?
I think we need to find a way to make private investment worthwhile for people to get involved in wanting to privately invest in Canadian films. There used to be a day back in the late 80s where people could invest in film, and there was a tax incentive for people to do that. But there was a lot of abuse in that system, so the government rescinded that ability to do that. So there is no incentive to invest anymore. It's 100% risk. I think that's how you do that. You know, we've been relying on government funding, the telefilms, the Harold Greenbergs, the OMDC money to help us make bigger budgeted films, and we need to find alternative ways to be able to do that so that it takes less pressure off those organizations and filmmakers and gives people more of an opportunity to find ways to make movies. And again, we need to find ways to get these films exhibited on television, on internet, on DVD, on iTunes and Netflix, and any other mechanism possible. And I think we need to create programs to create incentives for the exhibitors to show Indigenous product. Like get the governments or whatever to give people like Cineplex and AMC reasons to show Canadian films. I mean, obviously Cineplex and AMC are in the business to make money. They have fiscal responsibility to their investors, their shareholders, etc. So they have to make money. If there's a belief that Canadian films don't bring the audiences in for those films, is there an ability to create incentives for these exhibitors like Cineplex and AMC to show Canadian films beyond what's existing now?
What's working?
I think we're making really great films. I mean, I do. I think we have great talent pool of actors, writers, directors, crew people. The unsung heroes of making movies is all the people that, grind it out, lifting equipment, doing hair, makeup, wardrobe, props and set deck. I mean, construction people. We have an amazing talent pool of film. We have an amazing film community in Canada, from the top down to the bottom. And you can't make a Canadian movie without all these people. Like, these people, especially in the low budget thing, people are giving in themselves, working for free or working for virtually no money to help their friends make movies. I mean, I have movies that I've made that without those people, those being my friends and family friends, that I call family even though they're not, without them, some of my movies would never have been made. And they do it because they love what they do. They believe in helping us make films that speak to people, and without them, we don't exist. And anybody that says that our creative pool doesn't compare to other countries, they're smoking something funny, because really, we have an amazing talent of creative people. Some of the best actors in the world, some of the best writers and directors in the world, some of the best cinematographers in the world. I put them up against any anybody else in any country around the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think we're getting more recognized. I mean, Denis Villeneuve and Incendie and
Xavier
Dolan. Polytechnique, and we have, The Barbarian Invasion, and we have Mike McGowan and his films, and we have Adam McGowan and David Cronenberg. I mean, we have an amazing talent pool, and the young people, the young talent that's coming up is mind-blowing. Guys like Ryan Redford and Ed Gass and a host of other great filmmakers, the Whistleblowers director. I mean, and the other thing is, we need to support women filmmakers. There's not enough women filmmakers that are getting a chance to make their films. I mean, you can count the number of women filmmakers who are getting their films in theaters in this country on one hand.
Yeah.
It's the same people. Very few new people getting their films, women filmmakers getting their films made. We need to do something about it. That's really important too. A filmmaker is a filmmaker. A talented filmmaker is a talented filmmaker.
What are Canadian films that have inspired you to go into Canadian films?
I think we have a lot of great filmmakers. I mean, working with a guy like Mike McGowan, who inspired me, working with him for the first time on 1 week. And we did a score hockey musical together, and we just finished shooting a movie called Still, which will come out in theaters, or hopefully will be in TIFF next year. I'm inspired by his writing and directing. I think that David Cronenberg, obviously. I think that Denis Villeneuve. I think Alan King was a big mentor of mine. I'm involved in doing a documentary on Alan King with my producing and partners, Sarah Goodman and Sarah Zamet. We're going to do a doc on Alan King. People like movies like Going Down the Road, which was one of the first Canadian films I ever saw. To this day, still stands the test of time. I mean, I think overall across the country, we're making really great films. Gary Burns out of Alberta is a fantastic director. Guy Madden is making, he was just in some website or some publication said he's one of the third most influential directors of the 21st century. I mean, a Canadian gets listed in that group of filmmakers. James Cameron, Paul Haggis. I mean, we're exporting amazing talent, amazing films. Every year we're getting more and more films being considered for Academy Awards, and going to Cannes and being recognized there, in Berlin, the biggest film festivals in the world. We're doing it. We're making great films. We should be proud, and we need to find a way of continuing to do that and make more and get more people to see them. So,
thank you.
My pleasure.
You can check out more interviews, articles, reviews, and our Canadian film section at www.pressplusnumeral1.com.